Hello and welcome back to this channel Comic Books. Today, we will be doing a recap of a Rangers universe visual novel called Power Rangers. Can the Omega Rangers survive to deliver critical intel about the Imperials to Zordon and the Power Rangers? It all ends here. Now that the truth about the Imperials is revealed, the Omega Rangers must race to Earth to help the mighty Morphin Power Rangers against the fearsome Eltarian force. Meanwhile, Lord Zed struggles with where his loyalties ultimately lie, having finally discovered who was truly behind the sabotage of the Zeo Crystal all those years ago. With the fate of Earth and the entire universe hanging in balance, can Lord Zed and Zordon set aside their conflict long enough to stop the Eltarian? Amid a galactic war, new threats and unexpected alliances will change the Power Rangers universe forever. Let's dive into the story. As the chapter begins, we see a planet named Safe Heaven. Arkin tells us that the real name of the planet is something else, but it's impossible to translate the name into human language. He then says that this planet is very important as it is the home of the Master Arch. Master Arch was constructed by Morphin Masters, and it can easily access any place in space and time, even the morphing grid. Arkin says that he hid it for a long time because he believed that Master Arch was the most dangerous object in the whole universe. But right now, it might act as a beacon of salvation for them. Arkon says that even though he can see so much of the past and future, he still has made many mistakes, and it was time for him to amend them. A portal opens and we see Omega Rangers coming from it. The Black Omega Ranger, after taking off his helmet, says that the air was much tastier in this place. And the Red Omega Ranger, who was in bad shape, says that he was just going to take a nap in this place. At that moment, Arkin comes there and says that he was very happy to see that they all were safe, and he further says that many of them were very worried about them. At this moment, the Blue Omega Ranger removes its mask and all the other Ranger gets shocked because of what they see. In shock, the Yellow Omega Ranger asks Arkin how was he able to use the Master Arch. The Red Omega Ranger says how was Yale the Blue Omega Ranger. Black Omega Ranger asks if Yale is the Blue Ranger. Then he says that he is glad that he was not hallucinating again. Arkin says that it was not his doing. Yale came to him and asked for his help. When they arrived here, the Master Arch was already open. Red Omega Ranger in shock asks Arkin if he can understand what Yale was saying to him. Arkin says, of course, he can, and asks the Red Omega Ranger, can't he? The Yellow Omega Ranger then asks Arkin to ask Yale exactly how it managed to become the Blue Ranger. Yale says something in its language, and Arkin tells the Ranger that Yale said. A voice chose it, and the voice also said if they die, the whole universe will also die. Sometime later, the Black Omega Ranger was eating fruit, and he says that he doesn't know what kind of fruit this was, but it tastes great and that he will eat the whole tree by himself. The Red Omega Ranger asks the Yellow Omega Ranger that was she able to turn Xi on. Yellow Omega Ranger says that she was about to try turning it on. But when she plugged in Xi, she found many distress calls and all of them were from Earth. This was the last one. Then she plays the last distress call and a holographic image of a White Ranger appears. The White Ranger says that he was Tommy and he doesn't know if they are receiving these messages or if they are just ignoring them. There was no easy way to tell them this, but Zordon was dead. He was killed by his people, and now the Eltarians have invaded Earth. Everyone was shocked by this, but the Red Omega Ranger tells them to remain calm. The White Ranger says that he doesn't care about Zordon, Draken, or any of the other stuff. Their home was being attacked and he needs their help. He tells them to get back to Earth because if they don't, there might not be anything left to come back till later. Meanwhile on Earth, the mighty Morphin Power Rangers were fighting against the invaders. The Green Ranger says that is why the Eltarians were attacking their world. The Pink Ranger says that maybe they liked Grace even less than them. The Yellow Ranger says that it was a strategy, and without their command center, the Promethea was their last base of operation. The White Ranger says that if they lose this place, the war will be over before it even begins. The Yellow Ranger whole fighting asks the others if they can call in words to help them. She knows that there are no escalation rules, but the Pink Ranger interrupts her and says that they never broke Zordon's rule when he was alive, and she was not going to break them because he is dead now. They will fight this battle themselves. The Yellow Ranger says these were not the ones that she was worried about. The White Ranger tells Grace that they were going to be attacked by something big. Grace tells them that the Prometheus shield should be able to protect them from aerial attacks. She tells them to keep the ground forces in front of them. Green Ranger says to Grace that's a lot easier to said than done. There are a lot of them. Grace says to the Green Ranger that she was too busy evacuating all the citizens and non-essential personnel. She doesn't have time to feel sorry for him. She says to him that he was a Power Ranger and he should try to impress her for once. While fighting against Zardas's Handyman, White Ranger says to Zardas what was the matter, was he not man enough to fight him? Zardas says to the White Ranger, man enough. Such a silly phase. He says it like humans are not one of the weakest creatures in the whole universe. With their soft skin and fragile bones, took too little force to crush them. He further mocks White Ranger by saying that the insects on this planet will be much stronger than humans. And it was a miracle that the humans were still on top of the food chain. Then he tells Zeta to finish the White Ranger. White Ranger says to Zardes that he killed Zordon, his very own friend, and he betrayed his people, and for that, he will make sure that Zardes pay. Zardes looks at the White Ranger with pity and says that he can't even save himself. At this point a voice comes which says then it was a good thing that he had them. From a portal Omega Rangers emerge while saying Omega now and Omega forever. White Ranger says to them that he thought that they were not going to make it. Red Omega Ranger says that they had their plans, but it was not like the Earth gets invaded by evil aliens every day. The Black Omega Ranger says that it was like every day now. Meanwhile, the Blue Ranger and Alpha were caught by the enemy, and Alpha traps them by using laser beams and attacks them with drones. The drone takes down 2 of the invader, and the last invader destroys the drone, but Alpha defeats them and says that he won't let anyone go who attacks his drones in his own house. Meanwhile, 2 people were broadcasting the fight between the Power Rangers and the aliens and said that it was not like their usual broadcast. They tell the people that the Power Rangers were joined by Outer Space Rangers, and now they all were fighting against the enemy together. Bulk says that he was not asking people to donate or to subscribe to the channel at such times, but it might be the last chance. Skull says to the people who were watching to pray for them. The Yellow Ranger and Black Omega Ranger were fighting against a robot, and the Black Omega Ranger says that it sounded as if a young girl was inside of it. Yellow Ranger says that no one knows how old she was in human years. At that moment, Green Ranger comes and defeats the robot easily. The Black Omega Ranger says to the Green Ranger that his timing was awesome. But when the Green Ranger removes his mask, Black Omega Ranger gets shocked. On the other side, Red Ranger, the Pink Ranger, and the Yellow Omega Ranger were stuck because the enemy was just jumping in and out of the portal. Yale sees this and attacks the enemy and brings him down. The Pink Ranger then says that Yale should be on their team. On the other side, the White Ranger asks the Red Omega Ranger that do they have a dog on their team now. The Red Omega Ranger says that it was an alien cat, and he was just trying to process it. They both attack Zeta and finally manage to push him back. White Ranger says to Zardes that was he planning to join the fight now, and the Red Omega Ranger says that it looked like they were winning. Zardes tells them to look up, and when they do they get a massive surprise. The Eternals were there and Zardes commands them to attack. The Rangers tell Other to quickly run, but the blast created by the Eternal attacks destroys the whole area. Another Eternal makes its way to the moon and destroys it alongside Draken's base and him. After coming back to her Black L, the Pink Ranger tries to call everyone. The Ranger comes there and lifts a boulder off of her and tells the rest that he found her. Red Omega Ranger tells everyone to leave, but the Pink Ranger says that they can't leave yet. The Red Omega Ranger opens a portal and says that they can't do anything. They should retreat for the time being. While they were talking, an army of their enemies comes there and the Red Omega Ranger and the rest flee from that place. Meanwhile, Blue Ranger and Alpha were taking Zordon, who is now in a chemical liquid form, somewhere safe. But Draken's men arrive there and threaten them to hand Zordon over. At this point, Red Omega Ranger comes there through the portal and tells Draken's men that their boss was dead, and if they want to live they should come with them. Draken's men don't trust the Red Omega Ranger, and the Red Omega Ranger says that it was their choice. They can stay here and wait for this death, or they can come with them and live because an Eternal was heading this way, and it will destroy anything in its path. Meanwhile, on the outside, Zardes was enjoying the view and he says that in the name of justice and peace, he hereby claims the planet Earth for the Elterane Empire. May the power protect it. And that's all for today, guys. Stay tuned to get more new videos. Stay safe and keep watching.